it's a brand new reacting to true story scary animations. And boy, you better get that out of here. And everybody, please get the new Get That Out of Here chain. Just click the first link in the description below. Beg your parents, beg your uncle, beg your brother, beg your sister, everybody. Tell them you have to have one. But you guys know what to do. Get to the kitchen and get your snacks. Get your chips and popcorn and chocolate and candy and breakfast bars and juice or soda or even water. You can get some water if you want. Just get all the snacks you can and bring them back.
I want popcorn and peanuts.
That sounds pretty good, low-key. And yeah, gotta give a shout out to MJV Animations. They're the ones that made these amazing animations we're about to watch. But yeah, comment down below what grade you're in. Are you in 3rd grade? Are you in 5th grade? Or are you in 9th grade? Let me know. Woo, let's go! Guys, I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous. These are just creepiest. But hopefully you got your blankets and your snacks and your Get That Out of Here chain. And let's go ahead and check these out. Illegal!
I was on my first cross-country road trip, traveling alone in my new Lexus. It was the 3rd day on the road, so I was somewhere in South Dakota on a desolate stretch of I-90.
No, you weren't.
I had been delayed a couple hours due to heavy traffic, so it was the middle of the night, and I was still 50 miles from the hotel I booked. Even worse, I was running on fumes. I had neglected to get gas until it was basically too late, to the point that all the gas stations I was passing were closed.
You dummy.
I was almost forced to camp out in my car at a gas pump for the night, but then I finally saw a station with their lights on. I pulled off the road and approached this lonely gas station that to me was my glowing salvation. Of course, when I tried to pay at the pump, it told me to see the cashier. I figured going in would only be a minor inconvenience, but that all went out the window when I saw the cashier. He was this greasy, unkempt creep who looked way too happy to see a woman walking through the door. When he smiled, he revealed horrid plaques on his teeth, and when he opened his mouth to say hello, I could smell his breath. I can still remember what it was like. Dry mouth, rotten sugar breath, and tonsil stones.
Jeez.
He said, "What's a lady doing traveling alone in the long, dark night?" I immediately replied that my boyfriend was with me, but he said he knew I was lying because no man would ever send his woman to go pay for anything. He was trying to act like this sophisticated, cunning charmer, but it wasn't working in the slightest. I tried to brush it off and say I needed gas at pump 1. The cashier replied saying he was going to pump 1 later while glancing down at my chest. I told him to cut it out, that it wasn't funny and that it wasn't going to work. Then I repeated myself about needing gas. This creep just kept going though, telling me that I must be tired and should settle in for the night, suggesting I stay with him, which I flat out rejected. The only reason I kept my cool was because I was alone with him, probably for miles. Finally, though, I was able to get him to go through with the transaction. Then I walked out the door, ignoring whatever he said as I left. Back at my car at last and pumping gas, thanking the stars that I was out of that store, I suddenly got hit with the extreme need to pee.
No!
She's dead!
That sort of thing had been happening to me a lot on the road, where I forget about peeing and don't notice until it's suddenly an emergency. I realized I'd have to go back in there and use the bathroom unless I wanted to piss my pants.
Don't do it.
The creep behind the counter seemed even more pleased when I showed up again. I asked him where the bathroom was, and he pointed to the corner. I rushed in there and triple-checked that the door was locked before sitting down to pee. I felt huge relief, but then as I was almost done, I heard something. The door was jiggling. I looked over and the lock was turning. The door handle turned down and the door started to open. I quickly stood from the toilet and pulled up my pants, but I wasn't fast enough to keep him from getting a peek.
Oh.
The store behind the cashier was dark as he stood in the doorway, staring at my groin, smiling from ear to ear, almost drooling. I screamed at him to leave me alone. Then I reached for my keys on the sink and clenched them so they stuck out from between my fingers. But he laughed at me and said that wasn't going to be enough to stop him. I thought I was going to have to fight for my life as he took a step inside the bathroom. But then, I heard something else that made him stop. There was someone banging at the door, yelling at him from outside. It was a man's voice, and he was angry, cussing at him for being lazy and not doing his job. I could hear him saying, "I can see you. Let me in. I need gas." The cashier's smile faded as he turned and walked away. He must have locked the doors and turned off the lights just as the guy was pulling in, which would have pissed me off too. I waited a few seconds for the lights to come back on and to hear the guy get inside before I took my opportunity to run the hell out of there. I jumped into my car and locked the doors, then I raced away. I didn't think to call the police, I just fled. By the time I made it to my hotel, I realized it was probably too late anyway. In the morning, I found the place on my maps and called the phone number. First thing the manager said was that they weren't even supposed to be open at that hour. They then asked me to describe the employee I encountered, and they seemed to recognize him instantly. Apparently, he had been fired a few days prior for getting too many complaints from female customers, but he never returned his uniform or his keys to the building. Knowing this, it was obvious that he had been using the lure of being the only open gas station on that stretch of road as a trap for someone like me.
Dang.
The manager said they would review the tapes and contact the police to get him for trespassing and possibly for assault. But unfortunately, I never heard about what happened. Since then, I always carry a knife, a taser, and a bottle of pepper spray with me. If that random drunk guy hadn't come banging on the door when he did, I would have experienced hell on earth.
No! You see, this is why I don't go to gas stations.
You can't trust anybody these days, man.
That's why you gotta just fill up your tank when you're in a place that you're familiar with. And pee before you end up having to pee at a sketchy gas station. But everybody, stick with me, okay? Don't go anywhere. I don't want to watch these alone, okay? So you guys are with me, right? Okay, good. Let's go ahead and watch another one. Let's go!
My girlfriend and I used to live about an hour apart. This meant I spent a lot of time driving, much of which was late at night. One night, I was driving back from her place around 3 a.m. after a long night spent together. The roads were empty except for the occasional semi-truck, and most of the houses had their lights off. Even though I had about half a tank of gas left, I decided to stop at a 24-hour gas station.
Not another gas station!
I guess I was just enjoying the night and liked the idea of not having to worry about it in the morning. The station was nearly empty, with just one car parked near the building from the cashier and no customers in sight. I parked by a pump and got out of my car, taking another look around and still not seeing anyone. The pump gave me trouble paying with card, so
Your card declined.
from my car and went inside the store.
Ugh.
The cashier was this half-asleep middle-aged man that barely registered my entrance. I walked past him at first to grab a bottle of water, and when I rounded the corner of the aisle, I realized the cashier and I weren't actually alone. There was a woman standing in front of the coolers, staring into them with her forehead pressed up against the glass.
Grandma.
She looked ancient, hunched over with a long, tattered coat, her silver hair stringy and unkempt. She wasn't moving, just standing there, like she was stuck deciding what she wanted. Unfortunately for me, she was right in front of the water. I really wanted something refreshing to drink, but I didn't want to go through an awkward interaction with this elderly, probably dementia-ridden old woman to get it. At a loss, I stared at her for a few seconds until she slowly craned her neck around to look at me. I immediately apologized for staring, but her reply didn't make much sense to me. She told me, it's okay to be thirsty. I didn't know what to say back to that.
She's flirting.
Just turned around and walked away to the other side of the store. There, I pretended to browse for snacks until about a minute had passed, and I figured the woman probably moved away from the water. Sure enough, She was gone from the coolers, but she was also so short and hunchbacked that she could have been hiding in any of the aisles. So I grabbed a water bottle and hurried to the register before she had a chance to find me. I gave the cashier $20 and went outside, barely speaking a single word to each other. When I got back to my car, I noticed my good mood had been totally shaken by that old woman. I looked around, expecting some other creature of the night to come and ruin my night even further. But as far as I could tell, I was alone. I told myself I was just being paranoid and started pumping gas, but I kept an eye out. I finished up, got back in my car, and pulled out of the station, trying to shake the weird feeling in my gut. The drive home was quiet. Just a few streetlights passing by, my tires humming against the pavement, and some chill, quiet music. About 10 minutes in, I thought I heard something shift in the back seat. A soft, rustling sound, almost too faint to notice. I thought maybe a bag fell or something, but my stomach dropped when I glanced in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I couldn't tell what I was seeing, but then it hit me. A figure was moving inside the car. I slammed on the brakes and brought the car to a screeching halt. My heart was hammering in my chest as I turned around to look into the back seat, seeing the old woman from the gas station. She was staring at me, her sunken eyes wide and unblinking.
Are you serious?
For a second, neither of us moved. I was frozen, my brain trying to process what was happening. Before I could move myself, she leaned forward, just enough to reach her bony arm between the seats and grab my bottle of water. Then she whispered something in a sickening voice. "You should drink from me instead." I ripped off my seatbelt and scrambled to open my door. I barely managed to get out before she grabbed me. I bolted away from the car, screaming for help as that old hag stumbled out after me, calling me to come back to her. I didn't stop until I was several houses down and hiding in someone's backyard. I knew she wouldn't be able to catch up to me or find me in the dark, so I called the police from safety. A while later, the cops finally arrived. By then, there was no trace of the woman. They checked my car, but nothing was missing. No signs of forced entry. After listening to my story, the cops said she must have slipped in while I was inside the gas station.
Yeah.
I realized I had forgotten to lock the doors again after grabbing the cash out of my car.
Dummy.
The worst part to me is that I still don't understand why that woman did what she did. Was she planning it? Or was it some spur-of-the-moment insanity? Either way, something was seriously wrong with her, and even though I could have physically overpowered her, I have no clue what she was planning to do with me or what she was capable of. If I hadn't heard that tiny sound in the backseat, I don't know if I'd be here to tell the story. Now, every time I get in the car, I check the back seat. Every single time.
Yeah, same. Oh, man, what is going on with grandmas today? Always check the back seats of your cars just in case. If I check the back seat and I see a grandma back there, I'm sorry, she's clapped. I'm smacking her back to 1954. Can't let a grandma disrespect me like that, sneaking up in my back seat, trying to grab my underwear. Not today, Satan. Okay, guys, stick with me. We're just gonna watch one more. Let's go.
I must have been around 8 years old at the time this happened, and my sister was 12 or 13. We lived in a tiny little house that we called the shack, that our mom moved us into after she split up with our father. It was all we could afford. My sister and I shared a tiny bedroom, but one perk about the house was the huge backyard, with a large above-ground pool and deck that we could always play on. We had a big privacy fence, and being the nosy little kid I was, I liked to climb on some of the wooden boards of the fence and check out the neighbors.
Don't do it.
I recognized the two little boys who lived in the house kitty corner to us, because they went to my school. I made it a habit every day to climb up the side of my fence and hang around and talk to them. I never actually climbed over the fence, just climbed a plank so I was high enough to peer over and talk. They had an uncle named Randy who was probably in his 20s or 30s.
Randy?
And he was usually in the backyard doing housework, so I got to know him as well. Both me and my sister would hang on the fence and chat with him most days. The conversations were always innocent, and he seemed like a nice guy. Now looking back, I can see some red flags about him. I remember one time he had a basketball and accidentally threw it over our fence. We offered to grab it for him, but he insisted he could get it himself and hopped over the fence with ease. He thought nothing of it at the time, but I imagine this was to test how easily or fast he could scale the fence. One day in passing, my sister mentioned to him that our mom works the night shift, and therefore it was just the two of us alone at night in the house. That was all he needed to hear. Shortly after that, it happened. I woke up one night to the sound of my sister crying. We shared a bunk bed, me on the bottom, and when I stood up, she was out of bed, leaning against the wall on the phone crying.
Oh.
I asked her what was wrong, but she assured me everything was fine and to go back to sleep. So I did. It wasn't until the next day that I learned what happened. Apparently, in the middle of the night, while our mom was away at work, Randy jumped the fence and tried to break in. He started banging on our bedroom window, telling my sister to let him in. She refused, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. So he started walking around the entire house, banging on the windows, yelling for her to let him in, and trying all the doors. That's when she got out of her bed and called 911, and I woke up. Yeah, I have no idea how I managed to sleep through all that commotion.
Seriously.
She tells me he was banging on our window, right by the bed, loudly. But I guess you could just sleep like you're dead when you're little. Of course, by the time the cops arrived, all he had to do was jump the fence in 10 seconds, and he was back in his yard. They knocked on his door, but he denied he did it, so the police said there was nothing they could do. They were shaken up by the incident, of course. My mom wasn't able to change her work schedule, so she started having us stay at our dad's at night.
Yeah.
A few years passed without incident, and we assumed everything was fine. I had long stopped talking to the boys next door. Then it happened again. Guess who slept through the whole thing again? My sister was a couple of years older now and had a group of her friends over for a sleepover one night.
Oh no.
We had a sliding glass door to the backyard near where they were all sitting. The door had the typical vertical blinds, except weeks earlier one of them had broken and we couldn't get it to stay back on no matter what. So there was a gap in between the blinds where the broken one was gone. Anyway, the girls were all sitting around the couch playing board games when one of my sister's friends suddenly turned rigid. She said, "Don't freak out, but there's a guy standing at your sliding glass door." They all turned around, and there was Randy again, his face pressed up to the glass where the gap in the blinds were, just watching them all. Naturally, everyone freaked out and 911 was called. Just like last time, he jumped the fence, and the cops said they couldn't prove anything, even though they described what he was wearing, and he answered the door in the same outfit when the police questioned him. That was the last straw, so we moved out of that house and got a restraining order against him. He didn't show up to court that day, so the judge automatically granted us the order. Never saw him again. Last I checked, I looked him up online. He's currently in prison for a bunch of random charges.
No, yeah, you gotta lock your doors and close your windows and keep your blinds shut. The good news is, them kids made it out of there. And this is why I don't move into white neighborhoods. No, I'm just kidding. But hey, could have been worse. But if you enjoyed this video, then go ahead and smack that like button. And yeah, I'ma see ya in the next one.